Awesome. So my first question for you is, what made you want to share your story about being sexually assaulted?
Yeah, I think the main purpose I had with this was I've been slowly hearing more and more stories of sexual assault and incidents like this happening on campus. Happening from athletes, which needs to be discussed. My story, I think, at the end of the day, was something that is going to impact me for the rest of my life, and I know that for a fact. And I struggled with it, and I continue to struggle. And seeing and hearing that other people on campuses are going through this and they don't have the support system that I was lucky enough to have, it really motivates me to want to talk to other people about it. And share my story. And I did a podcast in the summer coming into this year. And, the response from that for the most part was amazing. And just being able to hear people come forward with their story because of that was really inspiring. So I think any way that I can do my part to help other people would be huge. And I think during my time of struggling and going through stuff at like my lowest point, I didn't have a story to look forward or like look towards and look up to and kind of reflect on. So I think if I can provide that for other people of something that I wish I had, that can be a lot of help.
What was the name of the podcast? Did you do it on your own, or were you on someone's
It
podcast?
was Fast Break with Mackie. She's a former Denver player, and now she goes to Concordia and plays lacrosse. So she kind of does a lot of like reporting on lacrosse. So
Very cool. All right, I'll have to check that out. Very cool.
yeah.
Um, Next question. What was your relationship with the perpetrator, and can you describe the setting in which the assault happened?
Yeah, so this guy was one of my closest friends. We were in the same grade, and with sports, especially at a small university, there's a lot of like togetherness. I think that's like the best word I can think of. And our two teams were very, very close. So he was one of my closest friends. We were in town to celebrate my birthday and the 4th of July. So we had a group of his team members and a few of mine at his house over the summer. And it was very like casual, just like how we would normally hang out at school, except it was summer. So we went out of town to his house. So I mean, they started off really fun. And then as the night went on, that's when the sexual assault actually happened. He brought me up into his room, locked his door, and then that's when everything actually happened. So that was kind of the start of all of that.
All right. And then what were the emotions like in the days, weeks, and months after it happened? Can you describe what they were like and how they evolved as you got further from the incident?
Yeah, so I think dealing with all of the feedback and noise almost after it happened was one of the hardest parts. Directly after it happened, you hear a lot of people say that like as it's happening, you are like not there. It's a weird feeling, and you feel very just like helpless, and you feel like there's nothing like you can do to stop what's going on. Um, and we got back to campus in the fall, and it's a small university. People had heard what was going on. um and I didn't report it. I was not the one who came back and started telling the Title IX office. I didn't even tell my parents. There were very few people that knew about this. So when I got back to school and it was then reported anonymously by somebody who I still don't know, I was getting the direct feedback of people thinking, oh, you reported it, you reported it, you reported it, when, I didn't. And, the retaliation and the harassment that I received on campus from, his teammates and other people on campus was just like unimaginable. I think when something happens to you like that and you're scared to speak up, there's a small part of you that like hopes and wishes that the people that like say they care for you, that they're going to have a certain response, and when that response isn't what you get, it's hard because, now you're battling your own trauma, trying to get over what had happened. And you're also trying to navigate your way through a crowd of people who seemingly believe that they know what happened and they know this and they know that, which is hard. It's hard to block all of that out. So, I'm a good student. I've never struggled with academics. My GPA was a 2 point something in the fall I came back. It's never been below like a 3.7 ever, never in my life. Um, it translated directly onto the lacrosse field. It was very evident that something was wrong. It was very evident that something was not okay, and there were very few people, besides the people in my tight circle, that I could actually talk to about this. My coaches were nothing but supportive in this whole entire thing. But at the end of the day, the biggest struggle was, you think people are going to be supportive, and you think people are going to believe you, and you think people are going to have your back, and then they don't. And it's heartbreaking when people show you who they really are. And at the end of the day, you just have to, now looking back, I wish I could tell myself, like, you're going to be good. But I think that was one of the most devastating things, like imagining a reaction you're going to get from your friends, and then not getting that. So it's hard. It's very, you feel alone. And I feel like my biggest message is just to tell people that they're not.
For sure. So something I was interested in asking,
Mhm.
since you just mentioned lacrosse, I think a lot of people that haven't been around a college lacrosse team, they don't know all the work that goes in, the workouts, the study hall, the practices, and it's really like a full-time job. So
Yeah.
how are you able to balance that? Obviously, you said things weren't going well, but how are you able to keep doing that at all, knowing what had happened and knowing what you were going through mentally?
Yeah. So I think a lot of this, it took a lot from me being pushed, like, you need help, like, you need therapy, you need something, because this investigation lasted 6 months. So it was my whole entire fall going into my spring semester. So that was all of it. And the fall is a big time. Like, we say, like, that's when championships are like won. Like, you practice in the fall, and that's like really when you need to get your stuff done. So my coaches, they said, you can take a step back, you can, like, take some time off the field, like, you can do what you needed to do. But for me, that was where I kind of, like, didn't have to think about anything. But this part of my life that I was, like, pushing away was, like, seemingly finding its way onto the field with me, and, like, following me in places I was like, I just don't want to deal with it. So that was really hard. And I think also just trying to, like, block that out was, like, my way of, like, coping. Which, like, if I could say anything, like, all the feelings are gonna come up at one point, so you might as well just embrace it. I think that was huge. And my mental health really just, like, pummeled. I was in therapy from before that, and now after that, like, the amount of therapy I have to receive from it is crazy, especially in that certain fall. And I mean, there's so many incidences of mental health in women's lacrosse and other sports for that matter, where it's often, like, frowned upon. Like, we're supposed to be these big, tough, strong athletes who don't let anything of what our mind, like, thinks get in the way. And I think that was my biggest struggle with that. I kept trying to tell myself, like, this is lacrosse, this isn't my social life. This is lacrosse, this isn't my social life. But these small things are now big things, and I can't focus on lacrosse. And that was really defeating. I was leaving practice, leaving wherever I needed to be, 4 or 5 times a week for interviews with Title IX. And it was just slowly consuming my life, and finding the balance was really tough.
So you mentioned earlier that very few people close to you knew what happened. Who did you first open up to about what you went through?
Yeah. So the first person I opened up to was actually a teammate who was there. And she was nothing but amazing and supportive throughout it all. We, that same day, we called one person, who was not there. And there were probably, like, besides them two, there were probably like 4 or 5 people in my very, very close circle that had known what had happened. And again, we go to a small school, word spreads very fast. That investigation started, and it, like, game over. It spread like wildfire. Everybody knew, everybody was asking questions, and this was before I even told my parents. I told my parents once the investigation had started. My dad he's a retired police officer, and he worked in sexual assault. He knows all this stuff. So I knew the second I brought that up, it would have been a lot. So, besides that small circle, those were the only people I told. And then I moved on to my family, and then everybody just slowly started to find out their narrative of the story.
What was that conversation like with your parents when you told them what happened?
Yes, that was hard. I think, they had asked me since I got back from that trip. They were continuously like, something's up, something's up, something's up. And I just kept telling them, no, 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 like I'm just nervous to go back to school, like I'm good, like whatever. And then that investigation happened, and that's when I was really like, okay, like this is serious. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I like needed something or someone to just like navigate me through it. So, I called my parents, and I remember talking to them, and my mom, I remember her being like, "What? Like, what do you mean? Like, what happened?" You didn't, I told her me and this guy had gotten in an argument, and like that's why we don't talk anymore. Because she'd be like, "How is he? Like, why aren't you talking anymore?" And I didn't have the guts to tell her, so I just kept saying, "Oh no, like we just don't get along anymore. We just don't get along anymore." Um, so when I told her, like I feel like everything kind of clicked for both of them. And that's when my mom and my dad, they went into full like protective mode. I mean, my dad was nothing but amazing. He was like in Title IX investigations, you get like an advisor, and he was nothing but amazing and supportive. And I couldn't have asked for a better, as heartbreaking as it is to hear from your child. I think that their response was something that I wouldn't have received with anybody else. And it was just a great, as great as it could be, of help from them.
So when we first we exchanged some messages on Instagram, and you said that you really wanted to focus on what happened after the assault happened and the
Mhm.
investigation and how people responded. So when you first, I guess you weren't even the one that came forward. Obviously, you said someone anonymously reported you, but once that happened, how did those in power respond and the investigation, those doing the investigation?
Yeah, so the investigation was a slow start. I think there were a lot of interviews happening, and as any investigation goes, you need to give everybody due time. So the Title IX office was nothing but amazing to me. I mean, they ran an amazing investigation, and I'm thankful for the thoroughness and details that they went through. My coaches again were amazing, but it's unfortunate because my biggest thing right now is when you have people in power, when you have other coaches on college campuses and they are not telling you that this is not okay, their players are going to believe that it is. Even if they're not explicitly saying this is okay, no words are still words and no communication is still communication. So, you know, that needs to be worked on college campuses. And, even after all of this happened, the his leadership on that team was very, it wasn't there. I think about the reaction that you think about the reactions that you want other people to have, and you anticipate that people in authority are going to have when you hear that one of your players is sexually assaulting women on campus. And I was one of three that I know of. That's kind of why I came forward with it. But you hear these people in authority stepping back and not doing anything, and it's bad. They think they don't have to take up or step up and do anything, but you do, because now the harassment that specific team has shown me is just unreal. He got expelled, and they put his number on their helmets their first practice back. They I walk onto the field, they were told that when you walk on the field, like when number 0 gets on the field, like we get up and leave. So it's constant. It's constant. It's constant. There's times I'm getting screamed at across campus, like these just vulgar words. And the retaliation, and there can only be so much. And I was like, it's going to end at some point, and it's been over a year now, and I'm still receiving, like, every single day something happens, every single day. So I think the biggest thing with the authority and responsive faculty on campus is you have more of a you have more power than you think you do. And I see how much I look up to my coaches, and I respond to what they think is right, and their values, and that's why I am the person I am today. But when you have a coach, and when you have captains, and when you have these leaders on your team exemplifying nothing almost, and saying indirectly that what you did was okay, then the person is going to think that what they did is okay. So they're going to keep going forward and doing stuff like this because, you know, in their mind, they didn't do anything wrong. So I think whether that be training for the coaches, whether that be training for their captains, whether that be training for the whole team, which all three need to happen, there needs to be an emphasis placed on sexual assault on campuses for specifically athletes, because, you know, you look at the statistics and that's where it is. And, you know, people are placed on this pedestal because they are great athletes and they are this and they are that, and they're bringing money into the school. And that's when things get complicated, because if you're a good athlete, you can't make mistakes, you know, you can't. And that's the biggest like narrative that needs to switch. So, I mean, he was a great athlete. He is a great athlete. He's great at what he does, but, you know, in my mind, you can't help but think, if it wasn't him, like, would this process have gone differently? If he wasn't so good at his sport, would this have gone differently? So it's just, you know, it's heavy. And, you know, I think a lot of coaches need to kind of take a step back and ask themselves what they're doing for their programs and teams to spread awareness and help other people.
So you said that like every day something happens. How do you when you go out on campus, do you normally go out by yourself? Or do you go out with a teammate now, or how does that work?
Yeah. As the investigation was going on, you know, I rarely went anywhere by myself. He was on campus before he got expelled, and, you know, we lived in the same building. I had to get moved out of my building. I had to get moved somewhere else. We had to have a no contact order put in place, and, you know, it was scary. And the thing is he is still a very active presence in St. Charles and in the Lindenwood community. You know, he has a lot of friends here. He comes back and visits all the time. So, you know, it's a hard balance, because the school and Title IX and public safety, and they can only do so much to actually like protect me. And, you know, it's not even about me at this point, it's about other people, and it's scary. So I think, I mean, when he was on campus, I didn't really go anywhere alone. I was with somebody all the time. But, you know, this retaliation, harassment, and all of that stuff, they don't care. They don't care who I'm with. They don't care when I'm alone. They don't care about any of that stuff, which is scary, because of the things they say and things they've done. But, you know, it just shows no remorse, and it's sad.
So with that, have you reported them, or how has that gone?
Yeah, so people, as the investigation was going on, these things were slowly being reported to Title IX. You know, the athletic director got involved, stickers were taken off their helmets and stuff like that. But now I think I'm at a place now where when I'm being told things, or when people are saying things about me, or when people are yelling terrible things to my face or things like that, it's happened so much that I'm kind of just like numb to it. I kind of just block it out, and like, I'm confident in my story, and I'm confident that what I said and what I did after was the right thing to do. So, you know, I feel like I've grown a lot, and that was hard. You know, I told my parents, I was like, I need to come home. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is terrible. Like, nobody believes me. And, you know, now I've kind of shifted my perspective to, I don't care if people believe me. I'm not trying to force people to believe me. Like, the people who believe me will believe me. And I hope that like what I say and do can speak to them and reach out to them. But, you know, my purpose isn't to convince people that he's wrong and I'm right. That's not the purpose in any of this. You know, at the end of the day, like, it's about like being a kind person. And I feel like that's just a small topic that is oftentimes like looked down upon.
So you just mentioned this. I'm glad you did. You said you didn't want to be there. You wanted to go home. Did you ever think about dropping out for a semester or even transferring schools?
Yeah, there were brief moments where I was like, this is too much. Like, I need to go home. I think I know very well I wouldn't be happy at any other school, even with all of this going on. Momentarily, sure, but the people who do support me here, whether that be a handful of people compared to everybody, it's just unrealistic. That's never going to happen. You're never going to have everybody support you. So the small group of people I have here that does support me is something I know I couldn't find anywhere else. Again, for the majority of my team, the people on this campus are very supportive, but, you know, there are a lot of people who directly take things against me. And that was hard. I was like, you know what, like, maybe this isn't the place for me. But those moments or those thoughts kind of lasted a few minutes, and I was moved on because I knew I wouldn't really be happy anywhere else. My team, my coaches, they have been nothing but supportive and loving throughout all of this, and I know I wouldn't be able to find that anywhere else.
And just to kind of put it in perspective for people that don't know, where are you from and how far from home is
Yeah.
Lindenwood?
Yeah, so I grew up in California, and then my freshman year of college, my parents moved to Colorado. So now when I go home, I typically go to Colorado, which, you know, is not the Midwest. So it's a little ways from home, from St. Charles, Missouri.
For sure. So, you also kind of mentioned this earlier about therapy.
Mhm.
Along with that, what steps did you take to move past this and to basically, I don't want to say move on with your life because you said it's always going to be part of you, but at the same time, kind of get on with your life.
Yeah, I think a lot of me was hesitant on like the first few months was just like, why don't people believe me? Why don't people believe me? And my emotion was pure like anger. I was just so confused and I was like, I just don't understand. You know, he admitted to it. Like, what is going on? Like, why don't people believe me? Why are people being so mean? Why are people being so nasty? And I was just angry. And you know, that emotion, as they do, just kind of faded out and it turned into just like almost sympathy for myself. I think that that was the biggest thing, just feeling for me and realizing like what happened was not okay. And I'm the only person I need to worry about right now, you know, because I can sit here and worry about he said, she said, things like that, but that's not going to help me. Um, and, you know, just talking about it, I think, and not talking about the situation directly. It was more about the feelings I was feeling after. And, you know, opening up when people ask you how are you, like being honest in those situations, and having a core group of people. Two people is enough, one person is enough. And you know, that's huge, and I was very reluctant because I wanted to be right. I wanted to show people I was right and prove that to them. And then when I was able to kind of shift my perspective that like being a victim is not synonymous for being weak, I was able to move forward and be like, okay, like I'm not weak. I know what happened. People know what happened. And even if they don't, that's not my responsibility. So just like reassuring myself and talking to people and reading other people's stories and knowing that I'm not alone was a huge, huge thing.
So, how would you recommend others in this situation go about it? What was the most helpful for you, or was it just a culmination of everything you just mentioned?
I think surrounding yourself with the right people is huge, and that's never going to come easy, and that's never going to just happen. You know, I was lucky enough to have a very supportive family, coaches, and my friends, but you know, there are going to be people, and in my case, the majority of the people who are going to retaliate. And it's very easy to look at the majority and say, well, they're right, and let you shift what actually happened and make you think other things. But you know, for other people, just surrounding yourself with people who you know, love, and care about you undoubtedly is huge. And I think that that's the biggest thing I can say.
For sure. Um, so kind of going to, I guess, where you are now, how did being sexually assaulted change you as a person from who
Yeah.
you were before to who you are now?
Yeah, I think there's so many layers to all of it. I think, you know, my empathy and my, you know, just overall like attentiveness has gone up. And you know, it's, I think for a while, you know, I grew up in a nice area. Things like this didn't really happen. And now I'm on a college campus and this stuff happens. And I think it was a very big wake up call for me and a lot of people. You know, again, I know I was like the first person that this has happened to for a lot of people. Like this was the first time they heard about it. So I think for me, it was just, I feel like I'm now more confident in myself and knowing that, you know, I'm helping other people. So even if I don't know those people, even if this video or podcast reaches one person, that's all that needs to happen. So I think for me, my like desire and like longing for like helping people has gone up like an insane amount. And that's kind of how I'm like using my story to like go forward with my life.
Awesome. So, I don't want to say like the positive from the situation because I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
some people believe there's always a positive to every
yeah,
situation. So
absolutely.
are you thankful that not that it happened, but that you are so much more, you have so much more of a desire to help people now? Are you appreciative of that, or how would you describe that change?
I think, you know, when situations like this happen, you can't go back and change it. You need to learn to, you know, it happened, and now what are you going to do? You need to have a very like here and now perspective, and I can't change what happened, but I can change what I do in the future, because what I'm doing now is something that I would have never done if this didn't happen. um and you know, if it wasn't me, it could have been someone else. And I think that perspective change of just like, you know, we have a lot more power than we think we do as athletes. um and using that in a positive light is just something that needs to continuously be done, um, and shown. We people look up to us, and I think that using our platform and using the people who are willing just to share our stories, whether no matter how big or how small, you know, like you matter, and like you are not what happened to you. I think that's just like a huge, huge thing.
For sure. Um, and then kind of a similar question, but do you see the world any differently now? I know that a lot of people like the low moments in our lives and in everyone's lives, like those impact us the most,
Mhm.
um, and change us the most. Do you see the world any differently now? Are you still the happy person you were before? How would you describe that?
Yeah, you know, I've always been very outgoing. That has not changed. You know, for a while, was I a little lower and a little sad, and a lot of sad actually. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, I think I know who I am as a person, and I'm very secure in that. And I'm not going to let him win. I'm not going to let that situation define me, because, you know, as I said before, like I am not what happened. And, you know, like I, again, am very secure in who I am as a person. And I don't know, just like my perspective on things like it has changed. And I'm way more aware. I'm way more attentive, and I'm way more, you know, people, this happens. And, you know, now that I've shared my story and people feel comfortable telling me their stories, it's the number of times this happens from athletes to athletes, or from athletes to other people on college campuses, is insane. Like, you think I knew I knew this was happening before it happened to me. I knew this was a problem. I didn't know it was this big of a problem. And I guarantee for people, if you think you don't know somebody who this is happening to, you do. You know this, you know somebody who this has happened to, or you know somebody who's doing this to other people. And I think the biggest thing is you need to check your friends and make sure that they know this is not okay.
For sure. What is your life like now? So it's been over a year since this happened, correct?
Yeah.
How long has it been?
It's been a year and a half almost since it happened, and then it's just coming up on a year since he was removed from campus.
All right, so how would you describe your life at this point? You're still a student athlete at Lindenwood. You still play lacrosse.
Yep.
Um, how's your life changed? You know,
Yeah.
just give us all the details, please.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I where I am now is something that like a place where I never thought like I would be. Like, if you asked me even what 2 months ago in August when I came here, I was like, I'm not ready to be back. Like, there were a lot of emotions with coming back to campus, but I genuinely think right now is like the happiest I've been in a very, very long time. You know, I have a core group of friends who I know support me, and I'm not trying to push my way into people and relationships that I know are not healthy for me. And I think that that is something I've always struggled with. I want to be friends with everybody. I want to see the good in everybody, but you know, there's not that's not realistic. So, you know, we came back in the spring, and you know, I kind of shifted my mentality. I was like, I need to focus on lacrosse. I need to focus on lacrosse. Like, there were so many big things coming, and this was a like my legacy at Lindenwood is not what happened to me. And I wanted to make sure of that. And the only way I could do that was to try and move forward. So, you know, that's what I'm doing. And, you know, we came back in the spring, we won national championship. Like, that was just unreal. And, seeing the things that like I could do and we could do as a team, regardless of the bad things that happened before, were just like surreal. And that was very like eye-opening. And now being back, with again more people coming in, more transfers coming in that, are now my best friends and like love and support me and show me that every day, like we're ready to come back. And lacrosse is just something that like in my life it's never been before. Like it means something so much more to me now, which I'm so grateful for. So, the holidays are coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing my family and going home. So it's an exciting time for sure. Coming back in the spring and hopefully winning another one, and we're ready.
For sure. So, are you in a relationship currently?
I am. I
So
am.
yes, could you talk about that? Was getting into that after what happened? Could you just talk about all the thoughts and
Yeah.
emotions that went into that?
Yeah. So the guy I'm with right now, I actually like met in high school. It was a very weird turn of events that kind of happened, but he is nothing but like so loving, so supportive in all of this. And I think that's the biggest thing because, most people have been in relationships before where it's not healthy. And, if I shared this story with other people, I think it could have been a very different path. And, finding somebody who is a constant reminder. I have my parents and I have him, and they are my constant people. And I feel like, again, like when like these people are going to be there for you, like it really changes your perspective. Like if I have my parents and him, like I'm good, like I'm set, like I don't need anybody else because I know they're being genuine and I know that they, are going to be there for me no matter what. And that has helped so much just with all of this. And, as like a significant other, you don't want to hear these things. That's not a fun story at all to be sharing. And he took it in the best way he could, and we've moved forward. And he integrates it in how he treats me, and he knows, and he knows how certain things can be triggering. He knows how certain things are hard. And the love and support I receive from him is something that I couldn't even imagine.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Was getting into a relationship after it happened, was that something you didn't want to do or was it hard? I'm just curious about that dynamic.
I think I felt at first I felt very like isolated, and I just like wanted to be alone.
Hmm.
I felt like if I got in a relationship, those burdens that I had were going to be forced on them, and things like that. And I was very hesitant. So when that actually happened, I was like with somebody else, which was again a huge part of that. And I was very hesitant to start that relationship again and get into a relationship with somebody else, just because there's a lot that comes from that. And there's a lot that comes on them with that, if that makes any sense. Like the people think one way about me, and then you're in a relationship with somebody, and I couldn't help but think that they were going to think that way about them now. So that was hard. And you kind of just have to take a leap of faith and trust your gut and know that it's going to be okay. And I wasn't going to limit myself in other relationships because of what happened to me, because I know like I'm deserving of other relationships. Like I'm deserving of love. I am deserving of those things. And that was me telling me that, and finally getting into a relationship was a big step.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like um, that's something that's not talked about a lot in terms of sexual assault. Like moving on to something else, I feel like I was just very curious about the mindset and
And people like oftentimes like underestimate, like that takes such a toll. Like me and my family, like that took such a toll on my family of what happened to me. It wasn't just me, it was me and my entire family. It wasn't just me, it was me and my whole relationship. And this affected every aspect of my life. And those relationships at times were damaged because I was so damaged, and I was quick to take it out on them. So that's again a huge thing that's not oftentimes talked about.
for sure. My final question for you is, what do you hope people will take away from your story, whether that's one thing, two things, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people don't know the story, they are quick to judge and they are quick to form opinions, which it's human nature. You form opinions, you think what you hear, when you have somebody or people telling you something, you're going to think those things. But the biggest thing is just like let kindness be your fallback. When you don't know what to think, just be kind or take yourself out of the situation, because there are often times where in my situation I'm being directly harassed and retaliated against with from people who don't know what happened, you know, and that's hard because I want to sit here and be like, you don't know what happened, but that's not my place. So, you know, I just hope that there's something like that people can learn from this, that, you know, your words and your actions have an impact on people more than you know. And when you say something small and go home and don't think about it again, that person is thinking about it for months and months and months on end. You know, I could sit here and talk for 5 minutes straight about things that people have done to me, about probably things that people don't even remember because it was so small for them. So, you know, I just hope when people listen to this, they know like they have one person in their corner and that's all you need. Like, I am in your corner. I believe you. I trust you. Like, and that's huge. So I think just knowing like you are so loved is a huge, huge thing.